Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar, Less is More Functional Flowers for Culinary Application. My name is Aurélia Silva, Marketing Manager at Culinary Ingredient, and I will be presenting this digital event with my colleague Rick Van Dam, Application Manager at Culinary Ingredient. So here's a quick overview of the webinar. We're first going to start with some information regarding the market trends for culinary products. And then we will move on to the presentation of our functional flowers, working on texture, process improvement, nutrition, and then we will end up our webinar with a Q&A session. Just a quick reminder, all the attendees are on mute, but you can of course send us your question with the chat and we will answer at the end of the webinar. If we don't have enough time to do so, then we'll answer to you personally later. And of course, and as always, the presentation will listen to you after the webinar. So something new about this webinar is the tasting session. So most of you may have received free samples of cream dessert, and we're going to organize a small poll during this webinar to get your feedbacks. So the poll will be on the right of your screen, and you can answer directly with the WebEx platform. So please prepare your samples and be ready for the tasting. So first, let's start with the market trends in culinary application. So, if we look at the ingredients and consumers market in Europe, we can say that the key trend is a growing demand for natural ingredients. There are actually four main drivers to this trend. The first one being the high expectations in terms of health, as consumers are nowadays looking for products that are better for their health and that will improve their health. Then we also have the strong agri-food innovation that continues to push this demand for natural products, as well as the expectations in terms of CSR. And finally, the last driver is the digitalization of supply information, which allows consumers nowadays to have a direct and clear information about the products they consume. Now, focusing on the trends of the culinary market, we can see that there are five main trends, some being similar to the macro trends just presented before. So naturalness is, of course, one of the main trends, characterized by consumers' preference for natural recipes and a demand also for simplicity in terms of ingredients. So, for example, if you look at the product, the chocolate mousse and pasta dish are perfect examples of this demand, as they are free from preservatives and artificial colors. Another strong trend is the rise of plant-based products, seen as a way to diversify protein sources and bring new flavors. This is the case of the pizza, which is made from quinoa and flax seeds, and that is high in protein and source of fibers. The yogurt drink is also quite interesting, as it is made with coconut milk, rich in vitamins and minerals, and also contains antioxidants. So it's kind of a very good mix between the plant-based trend and the fact that the product is also good for your health. And to finish, we can also say that convenience and indulgence are two other strong trends for consumers. So, before moving on, here's a quick reminder of who we are and what we do at Culinary Ingredient. So we are the European leader in functional flowers with 30 years of experience in clean label. We have two industrial sites, one in France, in Arc, and the second one in the Netherlands in Nieuwegein. And to support our growth, we have invested in a new line in France, increasing our capacities up to more than 10,000 tons per year. So our goal is, of course, to provide top quality products to meet all requirements such as gluten-free, baby food, or even clean label products. So before we start the presentation on our functional flowers and solutions, we're going to have the polling time. So it's time for the tasting session. So as explained at the beginning, some of you may have received some samples of chocolate cream desserts, and we're going to ask you some questions about these samples. So we will start with a question about product A and B, and follow with a question about product C. So you may answer the questions on the right side of your screen, and you will have about 10 minutes to answer them. So in the meantime, we'll continue our presentation, and we'll come back with the answers later. So the first question, as I said, between product A and product B, one of them has a clean label recipe. Can you guess which one? So answer one is product A, answer B, product B, answer two, product B, and answer three, not concerned, for those of you who don't have samples. And moving on to the second question about product C. So product C has a reduced fat content compared to the other two samples. Can you guess the percentage of fat reduction? Answer 1 is minus 5%, answer 2 minus 20%, answer 3 minus 40%, and answer 4 is not concerned. So we'll continue our presentation and we'll come back with the answers a little bit later. So now, Rick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Aurélie. So before we go to talk about the application part, we first want to talk about our functional flowers and what exactly is the concept of functional flowers. So if you look at the concept of functional flowers, we can see that it's a combination between certain types of cereals and the process. And we can use different types of cereals like maize, rice or wheat, but we can also use different pulses. So we could also use lentils and chickpea, for instance. Of these products or raw materials, we can use different varieties that come with specific traits, which can help us later on with different types of functionalities. So we've combined these cereals with a process, and this is a process of heat treatment. And we have different types of technology available for this. For instance, the varigel or the extrusion process. And with this process, we can give the flour a heat treatment which will suit our customer specific needs. We can also produce these flours in different types of particle sizes. So if we combine the cereals and the process, we will end up with a functional flour with a very specific functionality suitable for a wide variety of applications. And I think the most interesting part is that it's a very clean label ingredient and it's always labeled just as flour. So if you take a look at the benefits of functional flours. So due to the controlled particle size, we can assure you that you have very low dust levels. And these low dust levels ensure that you have a better worker safety. Also, the better controlled particle size makes for a better flowability, which also prevents clogging on the line. If you look at the microbiology of our flours, we see that they are much lower compared to native wheat flour, and at the same time the enzyme activity is also very low, or there's no enzyme activity at all. This all also ensures that we have very good shelf life with our products. And then the viscosity control. So with our process we can offer a wide range of different types of viscosity flours. So we have products that are more instant, that generate a lot of cold viscosity, but we also have products that generate a lot of hot viscosity. And if you look at the little graph underneath, you can see that we also have products that meet each other in the middle. Those products give both hot and cold viscosity. So as we can use different raw materials, we can also offer these products gluten-free, based on maize, rice, or even pulses. So to give you a summary of what a functional flour actually is, we see that we have different varieties that we could use. Due to the heat treatment, we have low microbiology and low or no enzyme activity at all. Due to the controlled particle size, we have low dust and a good flowability, and we can really control the viscosity of the flour with our process. And we can also offer this gluten-free. So what you end up is with a very nice multifunctional clean label ingredient. Finally, we can package it in regular bags, big bags, or even bulk if necessary. So we're going to talk about the first aspect we want to work on, and that is texture. So what can we exactly do with functional flours in terms of texture? So obviously we can play around with the cold or hot viscosity, so this will alter the texture of your application. We can also improve the freeze-thaw stability, so we have, for instance, the West of Wheat Visco Plus for that. We can replace additives like certain type of gums or starches or modified starches. We can alter the texture of a product, for instance, in a meat pate. You can get a little bit more sliceable or even spreadable. And we can also use granulated flours to give a more coarse mouthfeel, or use very fine flours to give a more smooth mouthfeel. So there's quite a lot of things in terms of texture we can do with our flours. So a few of those solutions are the West of Wheat 7418, which is an instant flour that generates a lot of cold viscosity, and the West of Visco Plus, which generates hot viscosity. So if you take a look at the example of a bechamel, we can see on the list of ingredients that we have modified starch and a thickening agent. So the challenge is to keep it very stable and to keep a stable emulsion during the pasteurization process. So we need a flour that is resistant to the process in order to have a nice texture in the end. So we want it to be stable during the cooking process, and we need to have a nice color in the end product. So we can offer a solution with our functional flour, and this one is based on wheat. We slightly have to adjust the recipe, but then we will end up with a very nice consistent smooth sauce. So if we take a look at the recipe, you can see that in this case we've replaced the modified starch, which is dosed at 4%, with 6% of Resto Visco Plus. You can see that we also kind of slightly reduced the water content, and by doing so, you can see that in the bottom left that we end up with a very nice and creamy sauce. Especially if you compare it to the 6% of native wheat flour, you can see that it's very lumpy, and this is after 2 freeze-thaw cycles. So the modified starch is doing much better in terms of viscosity. It's less lumpy, but still you can see that it's not completely smooth. And by using the Resto Visco Plus, you can really have a smooth and creamy sauce even after 2 freeze-thaw cycles. So it will give you a traditional color and a homemade texture. It's a very good, has a very good resistance to the process, and it will prevent incinerators. And most important, it's just labeled as wheat flour. So let's talk a little bit about process improvements and what we can do with functional flours. So things we could do with functional flours is that we can offer flours that are very resistant to the process. So if you have a pasteurization step or a sterilization step, our flours will resist that process and will keep their functionality. Also, if you have a freezing step or thawing step in your process, we also have flours that can be beneficial. If you're looking to improve the consistency, as we can control the viscosity of our flours, we can also improve the consistency batch to batch, making it easier to process your products. And then simplifying the process, as we can do a pre-cooking step in our factory, we can sometimes eliminate a cooking step in your process, as the flour is already cooked. And then by introducing less dust in our flours, we can also improve worker safety. So a few solutions for that could be the Resto Wheat TM40 or Rice TM40, which are both granulated flours, or we could use Resto Wheat 1000R or Rice 1000R to bring a better resistance to freezing or thawing. So in this example, we've taken the application gnocchi. So the challenge is that with normal rice flours, you sometimes have very poor flowability. And this poor flowability can cause clogging in the equipment. So it can be very difficult to have a nice even sprinkling of the dusting flour. Also, because of the dust in the flour, you can have excessive dust on the line, and it can also be a problem in terms of worker safety. So our solution could be a functional flour based on rice. So there's no need to adapt the process in this case. We can ensure that you have a very good flowability, which prevents clogging. And as we have very little dust levels, we have no dust on the line and better worker safety. So if you take a look at the bottom left graph, you can see that this is a cohesive index, and the cohesive index tells us something about the flow behavior of an ingredient. And if we compare our wheat flours to the native flours, or our functional wheat flours to the native flour, you can see that they are much more free flowing, and this helps us with sprinkling and prevents clogging. And also, if you look at the right graph, you can see that all the particle sizes under 50 micron, that's something we consider dust particles, they are much lower in our functional flours compared to our native wheat flour. And in our granulate flours, there's almost none dust. So we can ensure good flowability. We can also reduce the quantity of flour used, as we can sprinkle it much more even, and we can improve the worker safety. So finally, let's talk about nutrition and what we can do with nutrition. So we have quite a few options in terms of nutrition. So of course we can reduce fat with our functional flour. So fat reduction is an interesting topic to work on. And also we can improve the protein content by using our pulses range. we can improve the fiber content using our fibers range. And by doing all these three things together, so reducing fat, improving protein, and improving fiber, we can obviously also improve the Nutri-Score of products or applications. Then finally, we can also offer a lot of our solutions gluten-free and also allergen-free. So a few examples which I already mentioned are our pulses, fibers, but also our West-of-Wheat WI. So if you take a look at this application, which is a fat-reduced hollandaise sauce, so we see that we start off with a Nutri-Score C. So the challenge is that we want to reduce the fat and cream content. So we want to really improve the Nutri-Score, but we want to keep the same creamy texture. How can we do that? So we can do that by using one of our functional flours. And you can see that now we've improved the Nutri-Score from C to B. And what we did is we replaced 50% we removed 50% of fat and cream by adding the functional flour. So the Nutri-Score is improved, and it doesn't have any impact on the texture, and maybe even more important, or on the process, and maybe even more important, on the texture of the final product. So it still has this smooth and creamy texture. So let's take a look at the recipe. So you can see that we have two very similar recipes, but in the second one, in the trial, you can see that we only have 8% of liquid full fat cream and 2.4% of butter. So we've reduced the fat content of these products, or reduced these products by 50%. And what makes this possible is the addition of the West-of-Wheat WI. So you can see that in the trial recipe we've added 1.2% of functional flour, and this gives us the very nice and creamy mouthfeel you would expect from butter or liquid full fat cream. So some of you might have noticed that there's also some modified maize starch in there, and that we have a clean label logo in the top right corner. So although the solution is clean label, the recipe is not in this case. And this is just to show you that you could also use our functional flours in combinations with a modified starch, but we could also offer you a full clean label recipe if needed. So in this case, we can increase the consistency, also improve the freeze-thaw stability, and the main benefit is, of course, the nutritional benefit by reducing the fat by 50%. This can also be very cost effective. So now let's combine all these three things together in one application, so texture, process, and nutrition.
Thank you very much, Rick. And now it's time to take a look at the results of our tasting session before we continue our presentation. So, coming back to the first question, which was between product A and B, one of them has a clean label recipe. Can you guess which one? And the main answer is, so you answered product A, but actually no, the answer was product B, and the product A actually doesn't have a clean labeled recipe as it contains carrageenan and modified starch. So you understand that in addition to giving you a clean label solution, our product also has no impact on the final product, as there's no difference between a product that has a clean label recipe and the one that doesn't. And now moving on to the second question, which was product C has a reduced fat content compared to the other two samples. Can you guess the percentage? And so the answer is, so you're right, the answer is minus 40%. So we have a 40% reduction of fat in the product thanks to our solution. And I think my colleague will explain that to you more in details.
So in this application, we've did a few things at the same time. So we've improved the texture, the process, and the nutritional value. So we've did some additive replacement. We've used a functional flour that is very resistant to the process. We did fat reduction, and by doing so, we also improved the Nutri-Score. And for this we used the following solutions. We used our functional flours West-of-Wheat L3D and the West-of-Wheat 1000R. So if we take a look at the list of ingredients, you can see that we have a modified starch and a thickening agent, and that we have also a lot of cream in this recipe. So what we want to do is we need to have a very stable mixture, so we want to keep it stable during the processing, and we need something that is resistant to shear. At the same time, we also want to reduce the fat in this product. We can do that by using our functional wheat flours. They will bring us a smooth texture without the need of any additives. They are resistant to the process, and they also can make it possible to improve the nutrition by reducing fat. So let's take a look at the recipe. So in A, you can see that we've used 10% of fresh cream, and that we used also a modified starch and a thickening agent. So recipe B, we've replaced the thickening agent and a modified starch by the West of Wheat L3D. And by doing this, we get the same smooth and jellified texture than you would normally expect with the additives. And then finally, in recipe C, you can see that we've completely removed the fresh cream. And by doing so, we've been able to reduce the fat content of the final product by minus 40%. So what did we need to do this? Well, we've used a little bit of West of Wheat 1000R. So only 0.3% gives us a nice and creamy mouthfeel in order to reduce this fat content in this application. So both of these products are very resistant to the sterilization, and they will bring us very good shelf life stability. This can also be a very cost-effective solution, as you don't need that much fresh cream. But I think the most important thing is that we managed to make a clean label application, and we've also improved the nutritional values at the same time. So if you're looking at solutions, our technical support is here to help you. So we have Domitil Bert, our technical support for Culinary in Southern Europe, and me, Rick van Dam, as a technical support for Culinary Northern Europe. And feel free to let us know what kind of products you're working on and what kind of processes you need. And then we can look at the trends and needs together, and then we can find a dedicated solution with our functional flours.
Well, thank you very much, Rick, for this presentation. Very clear. So now it's time for our Q&A session. So if you have any question, now is the time to ask them through the chat. Let's take a look. Yes, we have our first question. So, Rick, the question is for you. So what is your process scheme to produce those flours?
Yeah, so I think that's quite a difficult question to answer, as we have a lot of different types of technologies and processes available. So we can do many different ways of processes in our factories. So it's not something that I could easily give an answer to. But yeah, if you're looking for something very specific or a specific product with a very specific treatment, feel free to contact us and we'll come back to you by email.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a second question. So I think it's regarding our pulses flour probably. So what are they all worth the same protein content?
So yeah, if you're talking about the pulses flours, they are not all the same protein content, and it's mainly due to the fact that we can use different types of pulses as a raw material for our functional flours, and different pulses bring different amounts of protein. But also, if you're looking at other cereal products, they also come with different amounts of protein, and that will also obviously bring you different benefits in terms of application. So if you need an overview of all the different protein levels of our product, just feel free to contact us and we'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you. Then we have another question. So the question is, do you have a solution to emulsify and thickening in dressings? So, for example, to replace egg yolks?
Yeah, so the thing is that by doing the heat treatment with our on our functional flours, we also treat the proteins in our products. So what we see is that we can kind of stabilize or help with an emulsion, but it's very difficult to completely reduce egg yolk in this as an example. So we can help stabilizing the emulsion, but it's difficult to completely replace the egg yolk with a functional flour. But we can also always take a look at your application in order to find the right solution.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is going to be our last question. So the question is, do you have any oat products?
Yeah, so we do have a oat product. So we have a Westo whole oat at the moment, and we recently launched it in gluten-free as well. So that's something that's quite special. One of the main benefits of this product over native oat flours is because of the heat treatment, we have very low enzyme activity, but also good microbiology. But especially the enzyme activity or the lack in enzyme activity makes for a very good shelf life, so you don't get the rancidity you could normally have with oat products. So we do have oat products currently, only whole oat, but it's a very stable and stable product with a very good shelf life.
Okay, thank you very much, Rick. So I think we're going to close our Q&A session. So we've had a lot of questions, many questions from you, which is very good and really great. But we won't have enough time to answer to all of them. So we will get back to you personally with the answers. So thank you very much, all of you, for attending this webinar. We hope you had a great time and found all the answers to the question you were having. So thank you one more time and have a nice day.